It feels like every time you think you've got a handle on the Giza pyramids, something new pops up, doesn't it?
It really does feel that way lately, right?
Yeah, and not just little things either,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, huge discoveries, potential hidden chambers, vast underground networks.
And all this buzz around, ancient technologies and even connections to like lost civilizations.
It's a lot to process.
It is. And that's exactly why we're here today, to kind of wade through all of this and make some sense of it.
This is our deep dive into the Giza pyramids.
And we're going deep underground too this time.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, there's just so much out there, right?
Yeah.
You've got YouTube videos from Megalithomania UK Redacted, The Fifth Kind, and even like JRE clips getting in on the action.
And then you have channels like Ruslan KD, Ancient Astronaut Archive. They all have their own take on this.
So we've been combing through all of that, trying to pull out, the key findings, the things that really matter. And we're going to look at what these discoveries could mean for, our whole understanding of the Giza Plateau.
And importantly, as we go through this, we want to be super clear about where the information is coming from.
Right. We're not here to endorse any, politically charged or speculative interpretations beyond what the sources actually say.
Yeah, that's not our goal here.
We're just trying to give you the lay of the land, present the information, and then let you decide what to make of it.
Absolutely.
So a lot of the recent excitement seems to stem from this new research using radar scans.
Right. New discoveries.
Yeah. There's a team of researchers from Italy and Scotland, Curato Malanga, Filippo Bondi, and Armando May. And they've been using this like really sophisticated type of radar.
Yeah, it's called synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography, or SAR for short.
SAR, okay.
And it's not your typical ground-penetrating radar. It's way more advanced.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it analyzes these micro movements, these tiny vibrations in the structures in the earth around them.
So it's like listening for these really faint echoes of movement deep underground.
Exactly. It's a good way to put it.
It's wild. And then they transform these radar signals into what they call photonic information.
Right. It's almost like turning those echoes into a visual representation of what's down there.
Wow. So they can literally see what's hidden without having to dig.
That's the idea.
And this isn't brand new research, is it? I mean, they published a study on this back in 2022, didn't they?
You're right. They did a study on the Khafre Pyramid using this technology. It was published in the journal Remote Sensing, but it seems like it's just now starting to get more attention.
That's interesting. So their earlier work was focused on what was inside the Khafre Pyramid, right?
Yeah, and that was peer-reviewed, too.
But what's making headlines now is what they're claiming to have found beneath the pyramid.
Exactly. That's what's causing all the commotion.
So what exactly are they saying is down there?
Well, okay, so first, they claim to have found 5 identical chamber-like structures inside the pyramid itself.
5.
5. And that's just for starters.
Okay, then what?
Beneath these, they've reportedly detected 8 massive vertical formations. They're describing them as wells or shafts.
Wells or shafts?
And these things are huge. They stretch horizontally for over 6,500 feet.
You're kidding.
Nope. And they go deep to over 2,000 feet underground.
That's like deeper than the height of some skyscrapers.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing. And get this, some of them even appear to have spiral patterns, which they think could be ramps or stairways.
Wow, so we're talking about potentially massive underground structures here.
Exactly, structures that extend way beyond what we normally think of as, burial chambers.
It makes you wonder what they were for.
It really does.
It doesn't stop there, does it?
Oh, no. This is where things get even more interesting.
Okay, lay it on me.
So below these shafts, they say they found 2 massive rectangular enclosures. Each one is about 260 feet across.
That's like almost a football field.
That's right. And from each of these enclosures, they're reporting 4 additional shafts extending even deeper.
Deeper?
Deeper. It's like a whole underground labyrinth.
So are they saying that this is all connected, like one giant system?
Well, some interpretations suggest that it could be an interconnected system spanning up to 2 kilometers beneath all 3 Giza pyramids.
Wow, that's massive. Are they calling this an underground city?
Well, they've made comparisons to the ancient Egyptian legends of the Halls of Amenti.
Oh, the Halls of Amenti. Yeah, I remember reading about that in Egyptian mythology. It's like this whole subterranean realm.
Right.
A place of judgment and transition in the afterlife.
Exactly. It makes you think about the purpose of these structures, doesn't it?
Yeah, if they exist.
Right, if they exist.
I just announced all this at a press conference on March 16th, right?
That's right. But as you can imagine, there's been a fair bit of skepticism.
Oh, I bet. So much skepticism.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you have claims this big, there are going to be people who doubt them, and rightfully so.
So what are the skeptics saying?
Well, there are some legitimate concerns, like Professor Lawrence Connors. He's a radar specialist, and he's expressed doubt about whether this technology can really penetrate that deeply and get a clear picture.
Well, that makes sense.
He actually called the underground city claim a huge
A
exaggeration.
huge exaggeration. Okay.
But he did say that smaller structures like shafts and chambers predating the pyramids are more likely.
Oh, that's interesting.
He even compared it to the Mayans, who built pyramids over ceremonial caves.
So he's suggesting that maybe the Egyptians did something similar.
It's a possibility, right?
Yeah. And we know the Giza Plateau was already a sacred site long before the pyramids were built.
Exactly. It's not unreasonable to think that there might be older structures buried beneath them.
So it's not like the skeptics are completely dismissing everything.
Right, they're just being cautious, and that's important.
Absolutely. And of course, you have Zahi Hawass. He's been pretty vocal, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, Zahi Hawass has weighed in.
And what's he say?
He's called the findings completely wrong, said they have no scientific basis.
So he's not buying it at all.
Not at all. But it's funny because for some people, that kind of denial just makes them more suspicious.
Oh, I know what you mean. It's like if he's that adamant about it, maybe there's something to hide.
It's a classic conspiracy theory mindset.
Yeah, and to be fair, the new research hasn't been peer-reviewed in a scientific journal yet.
It's true. It's still early days.
So we'll have to wait and see what the scientific community makes of it all.
Exactly. More research is definitely needed.
But this whole idea of hidden passages and chambers at Giza, it's not exactly a new concept, is it?
Not at all. In fact, there's this whole other story about the rediscovery of the Tomb of the Birds and a larger cave system at Giza.
Oh, right, the Tomb of the Birds.
Yeah, Andrew Collins rediscovered this back in 2008.
And it kind of supports the idea of there being significant underground spaces at Giza, right?
It does, and what's interesting is that the Tomb of the Birds, which is officially known as North Cliff 2, has a history going back to the 1840s.
Really?
Yeah, Colonel Howard Vyse and John Perring, they explored it back then and found these rectangular niches that they thought were used for bird mummies.
So it's already on the map.
But what Collins and his team did was they found a way past what everyone thought was the end of the tomb.
And it led to this whole other cave system.
Exactly. They called it the Dome.
Wow. So there's this hidden entrance within the tomb itself.
That's right. It sounds like it was pretty small and challenging to get through.
Oh, I bet.
And then beyond the dome, there was this south tunnel filled with massive boulders.
That was dangerous.
Yeah, definitely not for the faint of heart. And there were bats, too.
Bats. Oh, great.
And they noticed manganese and ochre staining on the walls, which suggests geological activity and maybe even ancient human presence.
Fascinating.
Yeah. They continued on into what they called the Cave of the Snake, also known as Collins Cave.
Okay.
And then beyond that, there was a narrow passage that they called the Tube, and it seemed to keep going south, but that's as far as they could go at the time.
But wait a minute. I remember reading that there's satellite data indicating this cave system extends even further.
You're absolutely right. There's data from 2007 using TerraSAR-X that shows it potentially extending all the way towards the second pyramid, the Khafre Pyramid.
So we're talking about a potentially massive underground network here.
It seems that way. And, this is even before all the recent radar findings.
Wow, so the evidence has been building for a while.
It has. And if you go back even further, there are reports from the late 1970s that the Stanford Research Institute and Ain Shams University in Cairo detected anomalies beneath the second pyramid that could be artificial chambers.
So this idea of hidden spaces under the Khafre Pyramid has been around for decades.
It definitely hasn't come out of nowhere.
And it makes you think about the ancient name for Giza, doesn't it? Rosso.
Rosso, which means mouth of the passages or mouth of the caves.
It can't be a coincidence, can it? It's like they knew about these underground spaces all along.
It does suggest an awareness of these features in ancient times, for sure.
And Andrew Collins has linked these caves to the ancient Egyptian concept of the underworld, hasn't he? The Dote and the halls of Amenta.
That's right. He suggests that these natural caves might have been seen as a physical representation of the mythical underworld.
It's fascinating how all these different layers of meaning and history are woven together.
It really is. And speaking of layers, did you know that Collins actually went back to the Tomb of the Birds recently?
Oh, really? When was this?
Just this year, 2025.
Wow, so he hadn't been back in a long time.
16 years, to be exact.
What prompted him to go back?
Well, there were rumors that access might have been renewed.
So he went to check it out.
He did, and there's video footage of him squeezing through this really tight entrance and navigating the challenging terrain inside.
It must have been incredible to be back after all those years.
I'm sure it was, but there's also a lot of controversy surrounding the initial discovery.
Oh, how so?
Well, Collins has said that Zahi Hawass initially denied that this cave system even existed.
Really?
Yeah, but then just a few months later, Hawass appeared to explore similar caves on a TV show.
Without acknowledging Colin's discovery.
Apparently not, which is kind of strange.
It is, and there's that weird detail from the TV show where an archaeologist was told to say that the caves ended at the tube.
Yeah, even though radar evidence suggests they continue on.
That's really suspicious. And then they blocked the entrance to the Tomb of the Birds with a metal gate back in 2010.
All of this just adds to the mystery, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes you wonder what they're trying to keep hidden.
It certainly raises a lot of questions.
Okay, so let's talk about that second pyramid. The Khafre Pyramid. It seems to have this really special place in history and legend, doesn't it?
It does, especially its connection to Hermes Trismegistus.
Oh, Hermes Trismegistus. Yeah, he's a major figure in ancient traditions, right?
He's considered the Egyptian counterpart to the god Thoth.
Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing.
Exactly. But he's also linked to the Hebrew Enoch and the Arabic Idris.
So he's a universal figure in a sense.
In a way, he is. And he was known as a psychopomp, which means a guide of souls in the afterlife.
Okay, but also as a keeper of secrets and mysteries, right?
Right. He was like the ultimate sage.
And the legend is that Hermes was buried in the second pyramid along with the original Emerald Tablet.
The Emerald Tablet, that's right.
Which supposedly contains the secrets of creation.
That's the legend.
So we're not just talking about a tomb here. We're talking about a potential repository of ancient wisdom.
Exactly. It's a really powerful idea, and this ties directly into the concept of a hidden chamber beneath the second pyramid.
A hall of records or the crystal chambers?
That's right. It's been called both of those things, and there's this local tradition, the Naz el Saman tradition.
Tell me about that.
Well, they believe that there's this mythical snake-like being called El Hanash that guards the secret chamber.
A giant snake.
That's the story, and it's said to blind anyone who tries to find it.
That's creepy.
Yeah, it is. There's even a prophecy that says only someone who's blind in one eye will be able to discover the secret.
Wow, it's amazing how these stories persist through time.
They really do. And it's not just Egyptian traditions either.
Oh, right. You mentioned other cultures, too.
Yeah, the Sabian and Chaldean traditions, they revered both Seth and Hermes as their founders.
And they believe that Seth was buried under or in the Great Pyramid, right?
That's right. And Hermes under or in the second.
So Giza was a sacred site for multiple ancient cultures.
It seems that way.
And this idea of Hermes as a keeper of knowledge, it connects to the whole Hall of Records concept, doesn't it?
It does. Edgar Cayce famously talked about a hall of records containing ancient wisdom, and he even suggested that the entrance might be near the Sphinx.
Near the Sphinx.
Yeah, and there are historical accounts of tombs within the Sphinx enclosure that lead to tunnels heading towards the second pyramid.
So there could be something to it.
And Andrew Collins believes that the entrance to the secret chamber is most likely within the Tomb of the Birds.
Really?
Yeah, and he thinks it's located near the second pyramid.
So the cave system, the legends, the historical associations, it all seems to point in the same direction.
It's a pretty compelling case.
And then there's the Emerald Tablet being green.
Right.
Which has led some people to believe that the chamber itself might be made of green stone.
It's a fascinating possibility.
It is. So we've got new scientific data, rediscovered sites, ancient myths and legends, all converging on this one pyramid.
It's like a perfect storm of mystery.
And it makes you wonder, what if these structures are much older than we think?
That's a huge question, isn't it?
Like, what if they predate dynastic Egypt by thousands of years?
Some researchers believe that they might even date back to the end of the last ice age.
Wow, that's a game changer.
It is, because then you have to ask, what was their original purpose?
Exactly. If they weren't built by the Egyptians, then who built them and why?
Well, there's this idea that a natural cave system might have been modified or enhanced by a much earlier culture.
For a specific purpose.
Right, maybe to tap into the water table or to interact with the Earth's electromagnetic fields.
Interesting. So they might have been harnessing natural energy sources?
It's a possibility, and there are even theories about them using these caves to influence the construction of the pyramids themselves.
Like using some kind of advanced technology that we don't understand.
Exactly. Technologies involving atmospheric energy plasma, things like that.
It's all very fringe science, but it's fascinating to think about.
It is. And then you have this concept of Egypt's elder culture.
Egypt's elder culture. What's that?
It's the idea that a more advanced civilization existed in Egypt long before the dynastic period.
Well, so like a precursor civilization.
Exactly. And there are potential links to other ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey.
Göbekli Tepe. Wow, that's one of the oldest known megalithic sites in the world.
That's right. And there's evidence of a sophisticated settlement at Helwan near Cairo that some date back 20,000 years.
20,000 years, that predates the pyramids by a long shot.
It does, and it challenges the whole idea of the pyramids being built with simple tools over a short period of time.
Yeah, that 20-year timeline has always seemed a bit unrealistic, hasn't it?
To say the least, especially when you consider the sheer scale of the project.
And then you have theories like those presented in the Pyramid Code.
The Pyramid Code. Yeah, that's a fascinating documentary.
It suggests that the pharaohs might have used advanced technology like electromagnetic pulsation to build the pyramids.
And that they had underground basements where they stored this technology.
It's a bold claim.
It is, but it's not entirely without merit.
Right. I mean, look at the Great Pyramid. It incorporates mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio.
And it's perfectly aligned to true north.
And it's located near the geodesic center of the Earth's landmass.
It's hard to believe that's all just coincidence.
Right. It suggests a level of knowledge and precision that we don't typically associate with the ancient Egyptians.
Exactly. Which is why some people believe that they must have had help.
Help from whom?
Well, that's where things get really out there. Some people believe that extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings were involved.
Aliens or interdimensional beings. Wow, okay.
It sounds far-fetched, I know. But there are those who believe that these beings either built the pyramids themselves or provided the technology to do so.
And they point to ancient texts like Genesis 6 and the Book of Enoch as evidence.
Which talk about the Nephilim and interactions between humans and otherworldly beings.
It's all very speculative, but it's part of the conversation.
It is, and it's worth noting that there are no mummified bodies or extensive hieroglyphics found inside the Great Pyramid.
Which is unusual for a tomb, right?
It is. It makes you wonder if it was ever intended as a tomb at all.
And the whole argument about the 20-year timeline, it just doesn't add up, does it?
Not really when you compare it to other large-scale construction projects throughout history.
So there are a lot of unanswered questions.
There are, and the precision of the Great Pyramid's alignment, its location, it all adds to the intrigue.
And there are those who believe that Giza has a vast underworld based on accounts from Herodotus Salt-Cavillia.
There are entire series on Gaia dedicated to exploring this concept.
And the acoustic properties of the Great Pyramid's chambers are really unique.
Some people think that they were deliberately designed to create infrasound.
Infrasound, that's those low-frequency sounds that we can't hear but can feel, right?
Exactly. And they can have all sorts of effects on the human body.
And Greg Braden has talked about Herodotus' accounts of underground passages and chambers used to store records from ancient civilizations like Atlantis.
Atlantis, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
It is, but it all seems to connect back to the halls of Amenti, in a way.
The halls of Amenti, from the emerald tablets of Thoth.
And Thoth is said to have Atlantean origins.
Right. Which brings us to Zechariah Sitchin,
who link Thoth to the Sumerian deity Nigishida.
And claimed that he was the architect of the Great Pyramid and Atlantis.
It's like this never-ending chain of connections.
It's truly mind-boggling.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's try to sum it all up.
Sounds good.
We've got these new radar findings suggesting significant structures beneath the Khafre Pyramid.
Right.
We've got the rediscovery of the Tomb of the Birds and this cave system that might extend to the Second Pyramid.
Yeah.
We've got all the historical and legendary associations of the Second Pyramid with Hermes Trismegistus in the Hall of Records.
And we've got a wide range of interpretations regarding the age and the builders of these sites.
From pre-dynastic cultures to aliens and everything in between.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, and we want to be clear that we're not endorsing any specific interpretation here.
Especially not any politically charged one.
We're just presenting the information as we found it.
Letting you draw your own conclusions.
So here's a final thought for you as you process all of this.
I'm listening.
What aspect of this deep dive resonates most with you?
Yeah, what sparks your curiosity?
Is it the new radar data, the Tomb of the Birds, the secrets of the Second Pyramid, or the bigger question of who built all of this and when?
It's up to you to decide.
But whatever it is, I encourage you to keep exploring, keep asking questions.
Because the search for answers is what makes this all so fascinating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if we never find the definitive truth, the journey itself is worth it.
And who knows what else we might discover along the way.
That's the beauty of it.
Mysteries never end.